Hey, greetings everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Plan B Success. Today we have Miha Matlievski with us, all the way from Eastern Europe. Miha has been an entrepreneur throughout his life, and he's seen the ups and downs pretty close, and that's what we're going to hear from him today. Just to give you a snapshot of his story, he ran a couple of businesses, was very successful at them, and then one fine day, boom, he lost everything. And he struggled with failure for a couple of years before he went almost to the brink of contemplating suicide and then came back from there to become a very successful fail coach, as he's called. We'll find out all about him from Miha himself. Miha, welcome aboard.
Hi, Rajiv. Did I say your name right? Rajiv?
Yes.
Perfect. Hi, and it's an absolute pleasure to be your guest. Thank you for inviting me.
Awesome. So your story is pretty intriguing. And, of course, we hear from different parts of the world. So Eastern Europe is something different, something new. So we would love to find out more about you, how you started, and how did you get to where you are today?
Well, the way I started was I dropped out of high school, and I had the luxury that my father had a small family business. I was the only child, and I had somewhere to go to work, because I kind of didn't really go well with the whole schooling system, and you need to learn everything, and how it's molding you into at least here in Eastern Europe, like in one certain way of how to do things, and I really didn't enjoy that. So I dropped out of high school when I was 17, and at 18 I started working at my father's company. But the thing was that I had this most perfect parents, and I never had to do much. I never had to learn much. I was more or less I loved connecting with people. I loved doing, sales in a non-salesy way, right? Really, where you're just creating connections, and just the sales comes naturally. So that was the sweet spot that I really loved. But other than that, it was more like tequila and partying all night long. And everything would be perfect if then, when I was 23, my father was just suddenly diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and 3 weeks later, he was gone. So I had no time to learn everything about running a company. And like I said, I was the only child. My mom, she worked at a bank, not even a bank clerk, but just office something, just more or less putting papers from one file into another. So it kind of was natural that I take over the business, and not knowing how to run a business, that business quickly started declining. But at that time, I was fortunate enough or lucky enough that I found some people who saw something in me. They were ready to invest in the company. They took majority share, but then they would run the company, and I was back to doing what I really loved. And quickly things started to pick up, and I was doing 150, 200% more in revenue than before. And, soon it was back to good times, good money, fancy restaurants, good hotels, good traveling, all of that. And since I was always full of ideas, I was always, seeing problems in the world and thinking of ways how to solve them, kind of that entrepreneurial mindset. Mm-hmm. And because they took over the majority share in the company, like I said, I'm not going to bring new project into this one. I'm going to start my own company. And so I started 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, and multiple other projects. And the thing that I got wrong at that time was that I thought I'm so great, when in reality, the whole economy system before that crash in 2008 in the US and 2009 in the Europe came to be, like everything was blooming. Now looking back, I can't remember a single company going bankrupt before the crash. But at that time, I was like, oh, I'm so amazing. Because of that, I never took the time to really learn how it is, the proper way of running a company, and especially how do you lay down the proper foundation. And I often talk about the story of the 3 little pigs. The first pig made the house out of grass or something, the second one out of wood, and the third one was the brick house. And so my companies were that first house without solid foundation. So when the first crisis came, the first wind blew, and bam, domino effect started. One of my companies was in real estate, huge project, and suddenly, because of the drop in the prices, my project would not be profitable anymore. It would actually end up with a huge loss. We were in the middle of it, and the bank just said, "We are out." And because everything I had, all my personal belongings, my personal net worth, which was at that time roughly around 15 million US, plus all my companies, everything was co-signing that agreement. And so the bank called me on a Monday morning. On Tuesday, everything was gone. And not just gone, but I ended up even being $5 million into personal debt. And I don't know about you guys in the US, but in Europe, if your companies go bankrupt and you can't pay your employees, you can't pay the taxes. And of course, I couldn't do that because it literally happened overnight. You can't do personal bankruptcy. So you can't, just wave everything goodbye and say, okay, this is now a clean slate. I'm starting over. A few weeks, nothing really happened. I mean, I was like running around and I was sure that I'm going to solve this. And slowly, the calls from people I owed money, companies I owed money, the calls turned from, hey, we are just checking to see when the payment is coming to, we're going to sue you. And then quickly they turned into, I don't know, mafia calls. We're going to do this and this to you and to your mom and so on. And that put me in such huge depression and anxiety and stress and everything. There was just this complete darkness in me, surrounding me. How you see the tunnel and there's no light. Like, I kind of was thinking like, okay, so I used all the jackpot of the good life, and now this is it. Like, I used it, and from here on, it's darkness, it's suffering, it's no goals, no dreams, no nothing. You're a loser, you're a failure. That's it. That's your life. And the months went by. The calls were more and more intense, and everything was happening more intensely. The feeling in my head was like there's a nuclear reacting, waiting to just explode from everything. And the idea of suicide, for me, suicide was, you do it, you jump from the balcony. You might be hurting for a second, like that, I fell down, but then it's gone, and that silence is there. And that silence was so appealing that slowly that idea was more and more and more becoming a reality. And then one night, it was around 11 p.m., I was on my balcony. The apartment that I was in at that moment will be taken away a few weeks later. And I just wasn't seeing any sense in keep going. And slowly I was smoking my cigarette, and I just climbed on the other side of the balcony. And then at one point I was just holding myself with one hand, and I was like this 45 degrees already, inclined over. One thought that crossed my mind at that moment was, well, will I do this right? Or, will I just really end it? Or am I gonna, mess it up and just end up on a wheelchair? But then it was the first time ever. Well, I need to back up a little bit. So because of my perfect childhood and my perfect parents, I was constantly told, how great I am, how amazing I am. It was almost like, we are recording this on a Christmas Eve, so it was almost like the new Jesus has come, like I'm dead great, I'm invincible, everything I touch turns into gold and all of that. So for me, it was always very hard to understand that I can do something wrong, like when I do something great, of course that's me. I'm this great, amazing, superhuman being, but when something bad happened to me, I always found something or somebody to blame. And so fast forward to the balcony, that was the first time ever I said out loudly, you fucking failed. You really, really messed it up. You made so many mistakes. And, it might seem like, oh, a hard burden, but hearing myself the word you know how in movies, when people are about to die, this movie starts in their
Right.
head going backwards. Where for me, it wasn't really a movie. It was just flashes of, you signed this agreement. You chose this guy to partner with. You chose this employee. You. But the amazing part was by hearing myself say all those I was like, oh my God, with so many mistakes, I was able to get to 15 million. If I change, if I learn, if I grow, if I, change my habits, make better decisions, if I change everything, I can do bigger. And this was when, it was like that light suddenly appeared. I mean, it was, on the other side of a very long tunnel, but at least there was a light. I got my dreams back, my hope back. And I climbed back. I stayed up all night, started just writing out on a piece of paper everything I need to change and do. And, like just a huge, huge, huge list of everything that I need to work on. And then the first thing in the morning, I started calling, those people who were usually calling me. And I was like, you know what? I don't care. I really don't care. Like, if you want to, hurt me, kill me, let's finish that today. Because when you call me in the morning, every freaking morning, I can't put myself in a state where I'm motivated or anything to do something. And, it's not like I owe you guys $5,000 and I can just get a job and repay you in 6 months. I owe $5 million. And, I need to create something huge. So either we end this today or you leave me alone. I'll call you once a month. I'll give you an update. But other than that, just leave me alone. There's so much I need to do to create something big. And I guess they all agreed. I mean, now looking back, those were empty threats. I don't think any of them was, a professional killer or something. But, I understand why they did what they did because, the whole economy was crushing down. And of course, me not being able to pay them and a few others not being able to pay them would send their company in the bankruptcy as well. And of course, it was just, a reflex, I guess. And they didn't know better or different. But, at that time, I really believed them that they will hurt me. And so I started this journey, slowly walking this journey of first laying down new solid foundations in myself, learning, changing things, changing habits. And then, of course, also a lot of business development learning. And then, like every Hollywood movie, this story has a happy ending as well. In 2014, it was actually on February 14th. It was Friday, the Valentine's Day. I was finally able to find investors to back my new startup. We created a company, and I was able to scale that company from 0 to $50 million in monthly recurring revenue in 9.5 months.
Awesome.
I think I'm still one of quite a few startup founders in the world that was able to scale that fast. Although I did hear a few months ago a story about, I think she's a Japanese lady, quite young, and she started kind of like a Starbucks thingy in China. And I think after 18 months, she's valued at about 1 billion. So like she killed me. But good for her. I really wish her all the best. And she must be amazing at what she does. To do something like that, I know how challenging that was. That's insane scaling on all the levels, emotionally, physically. Countless days of non-sleeping and so on. So yeah, kudos to her. That was insane. When you see on YouTube those movies about insanity training or something like that, so it probably goes beyond that.
Right.
Because it's not just physically challenging, but on all levels. And yeah, then in 2015, we were doing even more, and then an opportunity came by. By that time, my share was quite diluted, but there was an opportunity by a Fortune 100 company to take over. I was able to sell, exit, walk away on day one because all the foundation was there, all the systems were there, and I was not needed to stay in the company. I was able to repay almost 7 million of my past debts because, over time, interest, the lawsuits, and all of that accumulated to 7 million. And I had the freedom of time, the freedom of money, the freedom of choice. For me, the freedom of choice is the ultimate freedom because you do something because you choose to, not because you have to. That's a big, big difference. And like I mentioned to you before the interview when we had our little chat, this whole coaching thing just kind of happened. It wasn't like intentional. And people just started calling me, companies calling me, oh, I need your advice, I need this advice. And one day I was having a few beers with a friend and, like, what do I do now? Like, do I start a new company or this or that? And he said, well, but you love doing this. You love helping others. Why wouldn't you do that professionally? I was like, you know what? That really makes sense. And then a few more beers later, so the key is in having a few beers. I was like, okay, so how do I name this thing? Like everybody wants success something, like what am I, like success ninja or whatever. And he said, well, every story that you say, everything comes from those failures. You're constantly talking how, failure is so important, having healthy emotional relationship with failure, how you fail so many times before you have a success and all of that. He said, like, you're the fail coach. And I really loved that. I mean, I don't know whether it was because of fear or I really loved it, but, I actually literally at that moment, I went online. I had my iPad with me. I went online. I registered the domain, and I never looked back. And the more I am doing my fail coaching, the more I'm loving it.
Awesome.
And that's hopefully short enough story. So now the floor is yours, and just dig deep wherever you want.
So one question I have for you is, when you talked about coming back and finding investors and starting a new startup, what was that startup? What space was it in?
Energy efficiency. So we were helping big retail chains and big hotel chains to lower the consumption, not the cost, just the cost. We did a little bit on that as well, but mostly the consumption of how much electricity and how much gas they use.
So the time period between when you knew that your businesses had failed and that you had 5 million in debt, all the way to when you actually started up again, how long was that?
3, 4. Well, I mean, my failure was on December 7th, 2009. I will never forget that Monday when I got the call from the bank. And then, so Tuesday, the 8th was when I was flat broke. And then the company was started on February 14th, 2014. So it was 4 years and 3 months.
Okay. So let's look at those 4 years, right? That's a pretty long period of kind of being a failure and thinking about it every day. And that entire emotional roller coaster ride that you talked about, all the way to even thinking of jumping off the balcony, for instance. So what kind of a support system did you have in place at that point in time? And if you did come out on the other side saying, hey, it's my fault, I need to correct it, and then that moment where you said, I'm going to call all these guys and ask for time and then go and build something, that's not easy. It's not at all easy. And, you're talking about a really large failure, and, you're fighting with emotional battles, you're fighting with self-image battles, you're fighting all kinds of battles. And 4 years is a long period of time. So can you kind of take us through that journey and what really made you come out of it? It's not easy coming out of it.
Yeah, no, very simple. But the answer is very simple. I had a huge why. And that why then later on changed into different whys. But one thing is that part of the deal with the banks was a collateral also on our family house. And when I was there on the balcony, I mean, I wasn't thinking too much about my mom. Let's be honest. Like, I thought, oh, it will be better for her if I'm just gone. But, after I went through that aha moment, I was like, I was the one that fucked up everything. It wasn't her. Why would she need to pay for, what I did? And I was like, I'm not a quitter. I'm a fighter. And, when I started seeing that light, it's like, I mean, a lot in my branding is about the puzzles. Because I explain this to people. The way I think is puzzles. So when you have a problem, like you're an entrepreneur and you have a problem, it's almost like you bought a puzzle box and you bring it, you open it, and you just throw it, on the floor next to me. And then I start mentally in my head, like putting those puzzle pieces together. And I don't know how long I was on that balcony, to be honest. I mean, I don't know whether that was a few seconds, a few minutes, half an hour. I still don't know to this day because it's a little bit blurry.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, so how the whole thing went was me saying, you fucking failed, admitting to myself, and then by those flashes of past decisions or of past mistakes, where I saw that really it was something I did, my mistake, my choice, that brought that light. And together with that light and that understanding of all the things that I need to do differently, the puzzle pieces kind of almost like started putting themselves together. I mean, it's hard to explain, but I don't know how to better explain it. It's those puzzle pieces.
Sure.
And to bundle that with that huge why, that was really the answer. And from that moment on, it was easy because I knew why I'm fighting, what I'm doing, and all of that. But, I don't know how to explain it, but before it was just a huge, huge, huge darkness.
Mm-hmm.
So the few months from the failure, so the first month, I would say roughly the first month was really more or less me telling stories to myself how I'm going to solve the whole thing. I really believed it, I guess from that perfect childhood and being so overly confident and, I can do it, I can take it and so on. I really thought that, I can do it. I think that was my, the first 3-4 weeks were like that. And then, the realization, oh shit, I'm not going to do this. Then the whole world started just crashing on me. And it was really, really hard to really grasp what happened. And then with those calls and everything that started happening, I had no time to really think. I was more in that survival mode, I guess, just taking punches. And then I would just be so depressed that I was more or less just lying on the couch, curled up, being, it was hard to be by myself. I wanted to just go out. And then when I went out, it was hard to be even just surrounded with people, even just seeing people smiling, or even if I was alone, just walking, but, seeing people smiling and like, oh, they have goals, they have dreams, they have, they know what they will do today, but tomorrow. I remember at one point, a friend of mine called me and asked me if, like 2 weeks from now, it's my birthday and, I'm just calling people and letting them know that I have a party. And I was physically, I opened my mouth, but nothing would come out. I wasn't able to say yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to say no, but I wasn't able to say yes because that seemed so far. And I really didn't know if I'm still going to be alive by that time. So it was very, very dark time, full of emotions, full of negative self-talk, full of just, that battle trying to find some peace and not being able to find it. I remember, for example, every Friday afternoon. It was like no calls until Monday morning.
Wow.
But that wasn't, joyful. It wasn't like, oh, now I can enjoy the weekend. I was literally trying not to go to sleep for the whole weekend, just to extend it so that the Monday would come slower.
Right.
Because you go to sleep, bam, you wake up, 8 hours are gone. And I was trying to extend that for as long as possible. I don't know why, because I wasn't doing much, I was so just going through same things over and over and over. And it was really dark times. But yeah, after that suicide attempt, and I mean, there were previous, I wouldn't call them attempts, but I was driving in my car, I would see a truck coming in the other way, and I was like, like, just do it, like, just turn the wheel, like, so there were plenty of thinking of and even jumping and so on, and taking the pills and researching on the internet, how to kill yourself and so on. So there was a lot of thinking about that. It wasn't like, oh, one idea and bam, I go on the balcony. But then after that moment, I don't know, I just had this feeling, once those puzzle pieces clicked, like, change stuff, learn stuff, do stuff differently, and that ray of light on the other side of tunnel, I just kept going. I had this inner feeling. I remember telling this to quite a few people back then. I know that I will make it. I know that I will solve this. Don't ask me how I know. It was just this deep inner feeling that I will overcome that. But I had no, there was no basis for me to think that way. It wasn't like, oh, I had a plan or something. No, but it was just that inner feeling, inner knowledge. I will solve this. I will do this. And that just kept me going. And the more I was working on myself, especially on the soft side, like dealing with failure, understanding failure for what it is, the lessons and the growth, mindfulness, mindful meditation, breathing exercises, emotional intelligence, knowing how to balance logic and emotions, and so on and so on. The more I was doing that, the easier it was to just keep going. And the more confident I became, the more I was believing again into the whole thing. And then I remember, what was that? In 2013, yes, 2013, January 2013, I adopted a dog from a shelter. And really, that dog helped me to get back outside, to get back amongst people. You walk your dog and it's a puppy and it's like, oh, what a cute dog. And, you stop and you talk with people. And I started more, doing on those things. And because of him, I started taking better care of myself, my health, and so on. And it was really because of my love for that pup that I again found love for myself.
Right.
And yeah, then slowly, 1 year later, 2014, I mean, I went through a lot of pitching and a lot of no's, but I just kept going. I so deeply believed that I'm on the right track. I just kept going.
So, once you decided to take things in your control, you called all the people, you asked them to stay away, you started focusing on your thing and your journey into your new startup and all that. During that entire phase, did you ever have moments of self-doubt or kind of being pulled back into darkness again? Those kind of things happen to you?
Yeah, probably every day. And I think that's now that I'm working with so many entrepreneurs, I think that's a normal thing. Maybe not on a daily basis, but like at least once a week, like you're reconsidering and doubting and so on. And I mean, you just dust yourself and you pick yourself up and you go again. So there are three things that really kept me, when I wanted to give up on everything, that kept me. So one is a poem by Charles Bukowski, All the Way. You can easily find it on YouTube. There's actually a guy with very deep voice telling that poem. I mean, every time I listen to that, I get chills. Like if you started something why would you start something if you're not ready to go all the way? So that was one thing. The second thing was the story of Colonel Sanders, the KFC guy.
Right.
I could just see him because, I'm still a bit chubby, but at that time I was even chubbier. And I could just see the guy, 60-ish, chubby, and then that Corolla, driving around the US, sleeping on truck stops, baking that chicken, and then going from restaurant to restaurant. And the guy had 1,009 or 19 no's, So I was like, what was I then? Like 30-ish, almost 40. Now I'm 41. So that was like, I was like 30, 6, 7, 8. And I was like, how can I not, hear 50 no's? And that guy, I can do it. If that guy did it, I can do it. So that was like a truly inspiring story, biography, that kept me going. And the third thing was TED Talks. Like I had this morning routine when I would have my morning coffee was to turn on the TV, and because I had the Apple TV gadget, I flipped to that and turned in because you can have TED Talks app on the Apple TV, and I would just listen to TED Talks, the ones that are more inspiring, people who went from what I understood that even through bigger adversity, and they were now there standing on the stage, sharing their story, empowering people. And the amazing thing for me was hearing them say, I appreciate that experience. And I was like, in my mind, like, how can you, you lost everything, or, you ended up on a wheelchair. How can you say that was the best thing that ever happened to you? Now I can understand. At that time, it was hard, but I think it was that daily routine of I really, in the morning and before bed, I would watch at least 3 or 4 TED Talks every single day.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about your fail coach business. What do you focus on? What kind of things do people come to you for? And is there a lot of an emotional intelligence aspect to what you're doing?
I'm a business coach. I'm an entrepreneur, so that entrepreneurs are people who I know the best and can help the best. In all honesty, things that I teach them or things that I coach them on, of course, an athlete could apply that as well. But, I never was an athlete. I don't know the vocabulary and so on. So I don't market to that audience. So most of my clients are entrepreneurs, and usually they come to you, my cash flow is not the best, or I want to scale my sales, and, because most of them, they know my insane scaling story and, how to do it properly. And a lot of them want an exit or something like that. But one thing that I can honestly tell you is that most of the time I'm more of a life coach than a business coach. Yes, I give them a lot of the business strategies as well. I help them revamp the sales strategy, lay down the foundations, scaling, exiting, all of that. But most of the work is on you, the entrepreneur. That's the first pillar of, entrepreneurship. Right. And teaching them how to be emotionally balanced, teaching them how to be mindful, how to step back, and, different mindsets, like, permanent beta, because nothing is perfect, being adaptable, being a good editor in times of infobesity out there, and things like that. So at least half of the time, I'm more like a life coach, or I don't know how you would call it, like just helping them to become, because for you to go to whatever the next level for you is, it all starts with you inside.
Right.
It manifests on you on the outside. Then it's the company's foundation. And then only when you have the right foundation, then you can go as high as you want.
Awesome. Are your clients mostly from Europe or across the world?
No. Actually, most of my clients are actually from US and Canada.
Awesome. Pretty impressive. You've got a wonderful story. You've got, I especially wanted to delve into the dark period, right? Because a lot of entrepreneurs are without a lot of friends for obvious reasons. And most of the time it's a solo journey. And it's important to learn from people who've been there and done that, especially the dip going low and trying to come back up again. Not many people make it up back again, but it's important to learn what really helped you to kind of come back again. So that's really, really inspiring in your story.
If I can say one thing, this is I think it's actually my quote, or I just use it so often, and it's respect everyone, but wait for no one. And what I want to say is, it's your life, it's your dreams, it's your goals, and yes, of course, it's easy when you live in, I don't know, Chicago, and there are meetups going on every day, and there is a co-working space around every corner and so on. But at the end of the day, you are responsible for either quitting or winning.
Right.
And it's your responsibility to create your supportive environment. I mean, I did things like, I don't know, change the ringtone, change your alarm clock sound to something that inspires you, create vision boards and put them all around the house, make post-its with quotes, affirmations, buy books, read books, go find a meetup. If you can't find a meetup, make one. If you can't make one because you live in a small village, just join a Facebook group, join a LinkedIn group, just join a mastermind. There's so many opportunities. Even if you are, I've worked with people from all around the world, people from Philippines, people from Africa, from Nigeria, from Kenya, people from Eastern Europe. So, those are the places where you don't have a lot of entrepreneurship happening. And also the society is still that old mindset, go to school, find a job, work there until you retire, so there is this huge pressure from the outside. But, don't make excuses.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, respect everyone, but wait for no one. It's your life, your dreams, you have to make them come true. Otherwise, you have only yourself to blame.
Absolutely. There's so much for Plan Bers to learn from this. I do have a few questions for you. I'm going to quickly ask them and tell me whatever comes to your mind. What do you think you're most thankful for in your life so far?
All my failures.
Very rightly put. And what are you most scared of?
Regrets. Fear of regrets. That's one fear that I absolutely love. Yeah, I'd rather do something than regret not doing it.
Exactly. And what are you most happy about?
How I can help so many people. It's the warmest, the fuzziest feeling in your heart.
Awesome. And what do you look forward to?
Well, I have this purpose, and I want to be the person that really breaks the taboo called failure, because it's still such a huge taboo.
It is. And what would you like your legacy to be?
Exactly that. To start the movement, to create enough momentum that failure, it might not be possible to do it in one lifetime, but at least create enough momentum so that movement of breaking the taboo called failure will continue, and will one day, we will break it.
Yeah, failure is natural. It's okay to fail. And it's a stepping stone towards success. You're absolutely right.
I tell my clients there are three things that are absolutely certain. One of them is that we're all going to die. We all have to pay taxes, and failure is inevitable. Okay. All the rest is an option.
You're absolutely right. Well, this has been great, Miha. It's been great talking to you. Very inspiring. I'm sure there's a lot of lessons to be learned for the listeners. There's a lot of deep dive we can do in what you have said to us. Any takeaway that you would like to leave with the listeners before we wind up?
Two little takeaways. So, yes. Number one, not just for entrepreneurs, but anybody.
Yes.
Lay down the foundation. You can't start building anything from the first floor up. You need the foundation first. And the second one is that to be able to succeed, you will have to go through plenty of failures. Learn how to establish healthy emotional relationship with failure. Because at the end of the day, that negative emotional relationship will slow you down or stop you from achieving success, achieving your dreams and goals.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you. Take care.
Hey, I hope you liked that episode. I hope you found some value. Do check out my website, rajivmudumba.com. And by the way, do check out Top Podcast Mastery Program. That's out there on the website. And if you're interested in podcasting, if you're interested in creating a brand image for who you are and what you have to offer, definitely check that course out. I'm sure it's going to provide you immense value, and it'll cut short your journey of researching podcasts by the weeks into a couple of hours to get started and moving on it. Thank you very much.